Hey there, Workforce. Chris here with Work to Game, and I'd like to talk about Final Fantasy's housing. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the article on Kotaku recently, it tackled this because two players actually, right around the time of Stormblood, in order to try to gain some privacy, bought up 28 houses in a single ward. Now, it was on a smaller server, Mateus, and their goal was just privacy. They had decorated some houses on their previous server, and they moved over, and they just bought up pretty much a whole ward. Now, as soon as Mateus filled up, you had a lot of people starting to be really pissed because there were not enough available, and they saw these two people over here had a huge chunk. And the argument for this is that Square Enix has stated in the past that they feel that you really should only have one house per person and one house per free company, which means that they understand that, since you're in a free company and you are a person, there's going to be some people who have access to more than one house, so they know the rules will kind of get broken, but that's kind of the intent. There is no way they could have seen it going to this extreme. And one of the big complaints about having a virtually private ward is that this is an MMO, and they are trying to make a single-player experience out of what should be a multiplayer experience. And it cost them 150 million gil to do it, but it is seen as elitism. We're all paying the same amount per month to play the game, roughly. And so it seems like we should all have roughly the same access to things, even the finite resources like housing. The counter to this argument is capitalism. They chose to make the money, they chose to spend the time doing this, researching a server that had the space, which you can go create a character for free on any server you want. So they chose to find a server that had basically a whole ward available, hop over there and buy all that up. This was their choice. They chose to play this game in that way, and it's entirely good for them. Square Enix introduced housing as a finite resource, and Yoshi P has made it clear that that was the intent. Honestly, when you take a resource and you set a price ridiculously high, and we all play a game of chicken until you hit the price where somebody finally buys it, you are encouraging it to be this huge money sink, and you are knowing that roughly half the population is not even going to have access to a house if they're not in a free company with one, and you just have to be okay with that. So it seems to be the design, and since there are, 2,200, 2,500 on each server now, and there's supposed to be like 2,800-ish with the new wave that comes out for Stormblood, you're guaranteeing some people don't have access to housing, and so you're designing the game with that in mind. And honestly, two people having 28 instead of having 4 is really only a difference of 24 houses, and so all the people that are complaining, there's a significant chance that most of them still wouldn't get a house, even if you push those 24 back into the system. And we were all given the same opportunity to make this kind of money. I don't have 150 million gil. I keep 5 to 10 million gil. So that's really on me, because I've had more than enough time to make money in this game. So really, they chose to set out and do this. They furnish these houses entirely with things they craft, so they've chosen to play the game in this way, and that's entirely on them, and it's entirely on you for not playing the game in this way, and that's okay. And the final piece of this argument is that if Square Enix wanted to stop them, they would have just stopped them. It's entirely controlled by them. Scarcity is entirely manufactured in the case of video games, and so they can just say, oh, there's an error code that pops up if you try to buy more than one house, and if your free company tries to buy more than one house, and to have access, and so without paying for 14 accounts to have 2 each, one for their personal free company that they just only are in by themselves, and one for their character, there really would be no way for you to get this. And so if Square Enix really had a problem with it, if it was against terms of service or something like that, they would have just built it into the game that you can't do it. And the final question is, why would you want to do this? Why would you even take the time to build up these kind of resources to buy 28 houses? And the answer in the interview was that one of them, her husband had died, and she really was having trouble kind of grieving and dealing with that. And she found that she had this friend that she could enjoy Final Fantasy with, and they enjoyed decorating houses. And so in order to do that more, they wanted to kind of create their own city, per se. And, they wanted to engage in all the rest of the games. They make their money selling things that they make on their crafters, and they craft all their own items, and they really enjoy the game as a whole, but this is their primary focus. Just like yours might be PvP, or yours might be raiding, theirs is their housing, and everything else centers around that. And so that is why. And I'm not saying that if that's a good reason or a bad reason, it justifies a certain behavior. I'm just saying that's why they did this. And so is this good or bad? Well, my personal opinion is that I lean towards the second side of this argument, that it is absolutely your way to play this game no matter how you play it. Not to the point that people are like, you don't pay my sub, and they're being dicks, but just as long as you're not really getting in other people's faces, harassing them. You're not breaking terms of service. You're not buying gil. You're not exploiting the game in some way. You're not hacking it. You're not crashing the servers. You're not really bothering me. You're not killing frame rate by casting spells a bunch of times in a populated area. You're really just doing your own thing. My free company has a house, and that ward is dead. There is never anybody there. I occasionally go there when I want to just craft in peace, and I use the mender, and I think Brian uses the garden, and that's about it. We don't really use it for much. And we play on Sargatanas. It is a legacy server. It has a huge active population. Some of the most active free companies that I've seen, they're very involved because you have players that have lasted since 1.0, so it draws that, and that means that my server is incredibly wealthy. So it is very easy for me to make money, but it also means that whatever amount of money I have, it's never enough. I keep 5 to 10 million around, and that is nothing. I cannot buy anything of significant value. If a new mount were to come out and it were to be a world drop and it were to be sellable on the auction house, there is no way I could afford it for what it would go for. But that being said, I can make 100 to 300K a day just playing the market on my own server. So if I haven't made 150 million gil in the 4 years that I've been playing this game in the current version, that's on me. At 300K a day, I could make 2 million plus a week. And that's really just playing how I play now. If I were to aggressively look at what's the most gil I can make per hour and how do I do that, there's no telling how much money I could have. So, assuming that somebody didn't have an unfair advantage and somebody didn't break terms of service or hurt somebody else to get the money, I really don't have a problem with wealthy people, in or out of game. So, the fact that a game is inherently not biased, everybody had equal access to resources, everybody had equal access to the ways they made their money. If they chose to build up all this money, great. And if they chose to spend it in that way, great. It's a money sink. There has to be one. Housing is far from mandatory. It's like saying that Amazon cloud mount or whatever was not available in some parts of the world due to local regulations. It's not necessary to the game, and at some point they'll probably toss it up on the store and trade for real dollars, and if you choose to spend it on that, great. If you don't, you know what? There's plenty of other really cool mounts. Have you seen Ixion? And part of me thinks it's pretty cool that somebody even thought of playing the game this way. I haven't even focused on trying to get myself one house for the next patch, which I should have been saving long ago, and I should definitely be doing it right now instead of talking about this. But I don't plan on getting a house. I never thought, oh wow, instead of trying to get all my crafters to 70, I should be building up money so I can buy a whole street of houses. It's pretty cool. I think it's a neat idea, and if that's what's most important to them, I think it's awesome that somebody else can enjoy the game in a totally different way than me, and we're both part of the same population. And to the small number of people that are part of the complaining saying, you know what, I get this, they should be allowed to do it, what I'm mad about is that it's limited housing and I transferred to Mateus and now I can't buy housing and it's their fault. Well, you could have created a character, you could have tried to go to the wards. There were options to try to see if housing was still available. It's not like you have to transfer blind, and when you do transfer, you understand that risk, you understand that things do change over time, and if you choose to go to bed tonight at a reasonable hour instead of buy your house and you'll buy it in the morning, there's a chance that it sells while you're asleep. And that same thing could have happened to them. When they were buying up these 28 houses, somebody could have literally in the middle of them buying them all, bought 2 or 3 houses right in the middle, and they just would have had to be okay with that. So the idea that, okay, as I transfer and, sometimes there's like guild limitations and all that, and I'm going to try to move over and make all this money and do this, it's a race. It's inherently a race. So I don't feel bad when I need roll on something and I get it and you also need roll and you don't. Sorry. And I don't get super pissed if I need roll on 4 or 5 things in a dungeon and don't get any of them. It's a bummer, sure. But it's the nature of this game. And so I think that if you really feel that, wow, I only picked up Final Fantasy for housing, then why did you tie yourself to a server where it's now sold out? That should be your primary goal. And what were you doing with all the hours in between? I have other priorities. I play other games. I do things that are outside of games. And so if I'm not as far as somebody else, I don't get mad at people who already have all 70s. I don't get mad at people who have higher eye levels than me, higher eye levels on their alts than I do on my main. There are people who do. And it's fine. Play the game your way. They played it theirs. They're not hurting anybody. Those wards were going to be empty anyway. People would have just bought the houses and then never used them. So awesome. And if you try to point out the few things that houses are needed for, like gardening, if you actually break down the price of gardening versus the price of a house, you're better off holding on to your money. I mean, you would have to just garden way too much and sell literally everything that came out of the garden instead of using it for personal use to ever try to pay it off. That is not how people are making this money back. And there's no way they're going to use 28 gardens. So I think that there's really no good argument, but I'm willing to hear it, you know? So definitely in the comments below, let me know, do you agree with me? Or you disagree with me? I think there are two valid arguments. I can see why both sides of the argument exist. And so I absolutely would love to hear what you guys think. Maybe there's a side to it I didn't think of. This is definitely an interesting conversation. I think we could talk about it for a very long time. So what do you think? Does Square Enix need to interact in some way? If so, how? There are people harassing them in game right now. Do those people need to be dealt with in some way, or they are absolutely in the right for being able to kind of whisper them and treat them like junk? I don't know. Definitely let us know down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Chris with Work to Game, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. YouTube has a pretty cool video waiting for you over here. Our latest vlog is down below. For those of you new, subscribe is over here, and all of our other contact info is just right below me here. Thanks for watching.